Welcome to my Spectrum Life podcast. It's so good to have y'all here with us. I'm your host, Jessica, an autism mom. It's been a day. It's Monday. With me is my co-host, Kelsey, and
Good evening.
RBT. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you doing today?
I'm hanging in there. It's
Mm.
it's a Monday. Things are winding down with school, so it's it's interesting. Seeing how all these end of school activities that we have to wind up doing, which means you've got a lot of work on your plate right now, right?
I do. State of South Carolina is still saying you need to do your virtual IEPs, clear out your room, and just do everything on that checklist. So it's a good bit in the next few couple weeks.
Yeah, that's a big load to carry as a special ed
I
teacher.
love it though. I wouldn't change
Yeah,
it. Would
it's
not change it.
yeah, it's good stuff. Tonight we want to say a big, huge thank you to our friend Molly Ranker and her generous donation through our
Yes.
Norwex party benefit. And thank you to all our friends who purchased items during that party. Um, we're able to keep My Spectrum Life going for quite a few months now. So we are so very grateful for y'all's donations.
Thank you
Uh,
very
yeah,
much.
thank you, Molly. Um, well, I guess we got to jump right into it.
Yeah. Tonight we're going to end
Executive
up
functioning skills.
executive functioning. Thank you to our friend, your friend actually,
Yeah, Jennifer.
Jennifer. She actually mentioned it in one of our previous podcasts as a comment,
Mm-hmm.
and it was something that you and I discussed that is definitely something that everybody needs to know, and it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It is.
e- Executive functioning is a big component of any disability. It's not just autism,
Mm-hmm.
but it's mostly known in ADHD or ADD. That's where
Right.
most of the psychology studies come from. So if
Mm-hmm.
you are looking for it, I suggest you start your research with ADHD or ADD.
Correct.
And we'll get more into that. But I know that we're not going to hit everything tonight. I know
Oh
that we're
no,
going to be
this is a
splitting
big
it up.
topic.
And right, it is a big topic. And it took me, a couple years to learn.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a different way of thinking.
Right.
I know that I had to really study on it because I'm not a psychology major,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't realize how much being a mom, being those around those who have disabilities of any kind, including autism, how
Mm-hmm.
much of a psychology background or true understanding of psychology that you actually do need. And this is
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah,
Um,
I've always said that I felt like sometimes I needed to go back, start some sort of master's degree online in psychology just to get all this stuff.
just to get all this stuff.
I mean, I
Um,
do enough research.
Right. But I know that if I just want to say, if anybody out there, happy belated Mother's Day, by the way.
Oh,
I
thank
hope
you.
you enjoyed Mother's Day, and for all those
And
who are
to all those,
mothers,
yes.
even those who have angels. So
Mm-hmm.
you're a mother at
Yes.
some point. With
Yes.
that being said, everybody makes mistakes. As a teacher, I made a mistake with executive functioning skills. It's a
Mm-hmm.
very hard skill to teach. Um, Even when you're self teaching yourself to be able to perfect your own executive functioning skills, you still
Yeah.
like we tend to make mistakes. So don't be so hard on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If the first thing that you try doesn't work, there's
Exactly.
always multiple different ways. And then if you realize that there isn't any that works, I
Mm-hmm.
hope you go into research or go talk to your doctor to research some of
Yes.
this so we can farther grow
Yes.
this research. Because what were you saying about something that it's only been how many
Um,
years?
it's only been within let's see. I had taken notes from a book. Um, and then of course the library needed it back. So it's in my Amazon cart now. Let's see. It's um it's very neuroscientists know a lot about the executive functioning skills in disorder. Um, but it's become more of a hot topic
Hmm.
for let's see, for new professionals in mental health, medicine, child development, and education. Let's see. I'm trying to get my notebook here is not behaving for me.
It's okay.
Um, it's only been, it's fairly new, I would say. Um, that it's been, that people are actually readily knowing about it. And one of the things is some that once we get into, well, actually, let me just read the definition from Merriam-Webster, which they got it the psychological definition. Um, and when we start talking about what it is, everybody will see it.
Right.
Everybody will see it. And it's something that if you start mentioning to your doctors and therapists, you can start getting help. And that's one of the things that I learned as I started going through this and started going to the doctors and such. If I would pick up on the terminology,
Mm-hmm.
such as executive functioning skills or um, perseverations or whatever that terminology, when I started throwing that out and discussing that, they started listening and my results became a lot better because they knew that I was researching and that I wasn't just taking it at face value, that I truly wanted to figure out how to make things work. And honestly, there is so much trial and error to autism. That is huge. So, okay, so executive functioning is the group of complex mental processes and cognitive abilities, such as working memory, impulse inhibition, and reasoning, that control the skills such as organizing tasks, remembering details, managing time, and solving problems required for goal directed behavior. Notice that the remembering details is for goal directed behavior because my son can tell me every single detail there is to know about Godzilla. But the details to get his social studies portfolio done, no, not so much.
No.
So, okay, so let's break that down even further.
Okay.
Okay, so you have cognitive versus metacognitive.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead and explain what that is.
So cognitive is everything part of your brain. So when you think brain, you think cognitive. It's the actual um, medical term, cognitive, for your brain. And it's in cognitive. Anything that's referring to cognitive in the psychology field, special ed field, education field, it's to the brain thinking or the thinking of the brain. Um,
Okay,
so that means your working memory. That's all of it composed.
right. Okay.
However, megacognitive is your thinking about your thinking. That's when it really pulls into your thinking. For example, you're thinking that on Friday you have something due. Let's say the social studies portfolio.
Mhm.
But on Monday, as you're thinking, okay, well, Friday I have that due. On Monday, I can break it into smaller steps, get this done. Tuesday, that's technically thinking about your thinking and using your working memory to set up those
Mhm.
calendars or that long-term planning. So
Right.
cognitive thinking is about thinking, which is exactly what executive functioning skills use. So it uses
Mhm.
that cognitive thinking to be able
Okay.
to plan, write
Right.
notes,
Mhm.
make appointments. What else am I
Um,
missing?
well, here's an example, kind of a
Impulse.
silly.
Yeah.
Yeah, impulse. This
Mhm.
imp this example, so we went into the school for Curtis and had a meeting and we're talking to his teacher and she was saying that one time he got ran out to the playground
Mhm.
and ran to the top of what they call the spider, which is I guess a jungle gym, the new jungle fangled jungle gym things.
The dome. Yeah.
Yeah. So he ran to the top of that, but then he couldn't get back down because he couldn't figure out how he got up there in the first place.
Mhm.
So somebody had to help him get down. And
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh boy.
How do we walk this down?
How do we break this? How do we
Right.
deal with this?" So,
But that's
it's
technically we know how to do. But, like,
mhm,
you know how to get up and we know how to get down, and we're thinking about something else, but our brain is thinking about how to do this, and we don't even realize that Metacognitive thinking is not, um, you don't think that you're thinking. You can, but sometimes it's your subconscious taking over.
Mhm.
Um,
Uh,
oh,
Jennifer Jennifer says, "So true, Jessica." And then the schools will just dismiss the kid as, well, he just doesn't try hard enough, or he's lazy or uninterested, instead of calling it an executive functioning dysfunction.
mhm.
So true.
It is very
So
true.
true, Jennifer. And that's why I think it's still something that uh, we sometimes have to bring to the
The
school,
table. Mhm.
to the table, to the attention, because as a SPED teacher, or it's SPED teacher now, isn't it? Special
Mhm.
education.
Or
Anyway,
exceptional children, yeah.
yeah. Sometimes you're thinking more about, say, um, oh, the social studies test or something like that than you are the executive functioning that you kind of learned about in all of your classes.
Correct.
Or sometimes, I mean, I don't even know, when you get a special ed certification, do you go into depth for, unless you're like majoring in it or something, when you
Only if
go
you're
to
majoring. Gen ed teachers get an overview. They take
so that,
1 course out of their 4 years.
and
Whereas
so
if you have learning disabilities or severe or any special ed, you get 2 years of your major courses, like, in
okay,
depth with it.
so that actually explains, so if you have a gen ed teacher who says, "Oh, I have a certification in special ed," well, they're not going to understand things like executive functioning
Well,
skills,
if they have a
or
certification in special ed, yeah, they will,
okay.
because they go into it. Now, if you don't, if they're just a gen ed course or a preschool, well, preschool,
Mhm,
they actually get the executive functioning, because
mhm,
it's actually one of their curriculum for preschools.
right.
Um,
Oh,
but, if you're just a gen ed core teacher, they break it up either between for the well, at least for state of South Carolina, it's either
mhm,
pre-K through 1st grade, or kindergarten through 6th through 12th,
oh, wow.
or, just high school in a specific
Mhm.
area, like, you can just do mathematics. You don't
There's so
get
much, though.
any of this if you don't have, so a lot of them actually do go back and get a
Mhm.
special ed, certification. So if they do, they do
Minor, mhm,
actually get some
right,
of
okay.
this.
So, but it's the school psychologist that can really help you with this kind of stuff.
Yes, because 'cause they're the one, because that's what we were talking about earlier too, going back on what Jennifer's saying, is not we're not defending the teachers or anything like that, so don't get us wrong. But it's very new. It's been in the
Mhm,
field for maybe about 10 years. For the
yeah,
psychology side, well, you gotta think IDA is 1975, and they're
mhm,
still making the ramifications and changes to be able to help your child.
right.
It's only 2020. I mean, it's
That's
young. It's
it is. And
it's
it's, I
very
mean,
young.
it is, when you think about the medical field, yeah, that's really young.
Mhm.
Um, I'm some of the stuff that I come across with, say, I'm asthmatic.
Okay.
So some of the new therapies and things that they're doing, I'm at a doctor's office now where they routinely check my blood
Right.
for a specific marker that can tell whether my asthma is under control or not.
Oh, wow.
That's the first time. I've had asthma since I
That's
was in
first.
college. So it's, things like this are, even if it's something, like asthma or whatever, when it comes
Right.
to something with the brain, which autism, ADHD, things like that are they're a developmental thing, a
Mhm.
neurological developmental um, disability according to the medical community.
Right.
Um, we like to think of it as special abilities. Um,
I love it.
that's, it's, and studying the brain is just crazy in depth, and they're discovering so many things.
Mhm.
So, we have to find that terminology, but we also have to work together with everybody on our team, meaning, and that, for as an autism mom, my team consists of all the medical doctors, but all of the school professionals,
Mhm.
SPED teacher, homeroom teacher, all the subject teachers, you know, and all of the therapists. And
Right.
yeah, it takes a lot to coordinate that whole
Yeah.
team.
A lot of moving parts. A lot of moving
Yes.
parts.
But then to make sure that everybody knows about that, and you can say to your ABA therapist, "Okay, what can I do to help with executive functioning?"
Mhm.
And then as an ABA therapist, you also helped work with OT, so you could coordinate the inner workings of the executive functioning skills, and so everybody was on the same playing field, and you're all doing the same thing to
Correct.
help develop these skills.
Yep. That's why I like the VB map. The VB map
Mhm,
is specifically geared towards ABA.
mhm,
We use it. It's a way we check off milestones and things like that. When I teach special ed, I actually pull some of that into
mhm.
the school district because not everybody is aware of the VB map. A lot of them,
Right.
they go to Casey Lice assessments, some of these other
Mhm.
different assessments, Vineyard,
Yep.
Violin, and things like that. Not Vineyard,
Mhm.
Violin, and things like that. But a lot of them don't think about VB map. VB map actually breaks down goals specifically for your child with executive functioning
Oh,
skills.
yeah, yeah.
So
That's one
when
of
they
those that's one of those million pieces of paper that you fill out.
Yes. Yes. It is, and it's one of the ones that we actually, if you have ABA therapy, it's
Mhm,
what the BCBA actually sits down with you and
mhm.
shows you the chart where here's he when he first started, and each time he grows and grows and grows to eventually goes into these executive functioning skills.
Right,
Um,
right,
I'm no preschool uses it, but I really do not know. It's not the VB map. They use a different criteria.
right.
Um, but they definitely that's why I really suggest if anybody who has kids to put them in preschool if they can. Yeah, you're learning your colors, your ABCs and things, but they're actually learning to teach how to plan, how to do some of these impulse control, like someone steals your toy. No, we gotta learn how to share. You can't go on to some of these emotions, which
Mhm,
those who struggle with executive functioning, they their hindsight is not there. So, yes, it's an
mhm,
impulse of emotion. So, yeah, I'm going to go, wow, because you stole my toy and get really frustrated and irritated. But they don't see the hindsight that we do.
right.
They don't see, okay, if um I react and say something this way, what are my implications following that? That's executive
Mhm,
functioning order, like and functioning skills. Yes, a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, it's a learned skill. But as you get
yeah,
into your teenage years and some of these older
mhm,
years, you have more control of it than you do when you're younger. But some of them actually do pick up on the social cues of, hey, if I do it this way, I'm going to lose friends. And some of them do lose friends in kindergarten and first grade because they reacted
mhm,
to something that they weren't supposed to or didn't
right,
handle it properly. But that teaches them and they take it in and they're like, okay, I can't do that later on,
right.
AKA your executive functioning skills. So it plays into a part with social with autism. That's why you
Mhm,
see the gap sometimes go bigger. There has been studies done saying
mhm,
that it's not so much that there's a gap between social, but it's a gap between I don't know how to control my impulse, aka your executive functioning skills.
right, right.
So
Um, the oh,
yes.
so Jennifer is asking us if this is what we're talking about, the Verbal Behavior Milestones Assessment and Placement Program. That is the VB MAP.
Hmm.
It is an assessment and skills tracking system to assess language, learning, and social skills of children with autism or other developmental disabilities. That is correct. That's the
Thank
one we're
you,
talking about.
Jennifer. Appreciate that.
Yes. Yes. Sometimes we have a tendency, that's the other thing, you might have to create an alphabet soup, um,
Yes.
kind of a thing to remember what it all is. Because after a
Yes.
while, even in some of these books that I've had or read about executive functioning, they start abbreviating EF.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. I
Same
even
thing.
have to go
So
back. I'm like,
Wait, which one is that? Yeah, exactly. But yeah, now, some of the things that we can do to help with well, one of the things I was thinking of that is a basic way that we don't think about, but we're actually showing some executive functioning skills is with a visual schedule.
Yes. Mhm.
Um, which
Yep.
is okay, so why is that having a visual schedule? Why is that an executive functioning skill?
It helps with the organization, but it
Mhm.
also a study's been shown, if you're not a kinesthetic a cons the one with
Kinesthetic?
thank you, with movement learner, a lot of
Mhm.
us are actual visual learners,
Right.
which both go into your working memory, which
Mhm.
working memory is your memory that's getting short term and put into long term. So it's keeping
Mhm.
them constantly moving. Remember, working memory is part of your executive functioning. So when you
Right.
have a calendar, it's a what? A visual
A
or
visual cue.
mhm, a visual cue, which, oh, yeah. How many of you have Post-it notes? Right. How many
Ton
color
of us.
code
We got
right.
our hands up. Um,
How many co
oh, we use audio cues all the time when we have alarms go off on our phones for our schedule.
exactly, and that's
That
part of
was
it
the only
too.
way it was the
Yeah.
only way I could keep track of live lessons for the kids.
I mean, that's another one. That's how you've regulated your own self. Your that's a regulation skill, that's an organization skill, and
Mhm.
that's a working memory skill.
Mhm.
That's a 3 in 1. How many of
Yep.
you actually put reminders on your phone? How
Oh,
many
yeah.
of you color code or have an agenda to this day
Mhm.
to be able I color code mine because I have multiple I don't have kids or big family, but I do it because I have multiple things on my plate.
Yeah. I
But
I have a I have an agenda that, we actually started using this sometime during I just started doing it because I wanted to make sure, that Curtis would know what's coming ahead and my husband would know what appointments we had just at a glance. So I took a whiteboard and some washi tape and made myself a calendar.
right,
And on that calendar and in my agenda, it's everybody's coded with a certain color. And so
right.
Curtis is always blue. So I use blue for him on the whiteboard and I use a
Mhm.
blue pen in my well, it's called my reminder binder. That's just the brand of cute little brand I have for my, agenda. But, I mean, I did that for myself. I did it because then Curtis would know he could look and all he had to look at was the dark blue and he would know which was his. But
Mhm.
it was executive functioning skills on my part
Right.
that then is translating and helping him to see and be able to recognize, "Okay, this is what I have to do."
Exactly. That's a I love that idea. I may not steal it when I have kids, but I absolutely love it. I actually do this within the classroom that I do
Mhm,
too. I have them color coded with sticky notes, and they know their routine. Speaking of routines, how many of you, in if you have kids, you have a routine of a certain day that you go here and there. You have certain days that you do chore days. You have
mhm.
certain days for appointments. Guys, that's executive functioning
Yeah, it
skills.
is. And don't be surprised if your autistic child says, "We can't do that today. It's the wrong day for that." Or, oh, I did that so I went to a block schedule, for
Okay.
instance, case in point, I went to a block schedule because I have that capability with, the virtual online school that, Curtis does. And so we would try I would say, "Okay, hey, Curtis, once you get done with, all of your reading for your ELA, why don't you try and do an assignment for science?" "Oh, no, I can't do that. It's not science day." "Okay."
Right.
He
What
kinda took sometime and he did do okay towards the end. We're coming down to the end of the amount of assignments that we actually have to turn in and stuff, and so he's been okay to actually add some science on math day for ELA day.
So he's showing executive skills.
Mhm.
The being flexible is part
Right.
of it.
Which usually
So
he is so rigid.
he's actually done
Uh,
really well.
yeah, he's showing some, ability to have that flexible thinking, which, 2 years ago, not a chance. So they will get it. If
They
we
will.
keep on,
Mhm.
um, they'll get it. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about scheduling. What are some other ways that we can, let's see, that working memory, you talked about working memory. Um, what all is that's something that's an area that I know that my son struggles with. He
Mhm.
actually tested low on some of his testing within the school for working memory. And I was just talking to his sped teacher, and we were talking
Mhm.
about the fact that he has to do an essay that's a cause and effect or compare and contrast.
Mhm.
And he's struggling with that. And I mentioned that to her, and she said, "Oh, well, that's part of working memory." I was like, "Ding, ding, ding. That's executive functioning skills." I'm talking about that tonight. So what all does that working memory encompass? Okay, I take that.
Wow.
Oops, sorry. I take that as a big.
Wow. It's a
Well, I know
lot
it.
to digest. It's
Okay,
a lot.
okay. So this that you said something about it being the
Short term?
the short term into the long term.
Correct. So it's your better lack of terms, it's your conscious and your subconscious working together.
Mhm.
Okay. So every day at the end of the day, all of us have some kind of routine, for example, that reviews their day, or at least I do. Okay, I could have done this better, or I could have done, that's working into your long-term memory. You're correcting some of your own behavior. Um, but it's literally taking what you've done that day and applying it forward. You're taking that short term into long term. It's also for those that do have a working memory issue, sometimes it's as they're not paying attention to you. It's short attention spans because they
Mhm.
literally have to take frequent breaks.
Right.
So if you see that your child is starting to get frustrated, it's not that they don't understand what's going on. It's I'm overloaded. I'm
Right.
bottlenecked. I can't take any more of this information. So you're working information. So your working memory is taking everything in,
Mhm.
what your subconscious is taking in, what you're consciously taking in, and applying it to the activity on hand, or applying or storing it for later. It is constantly moving. So it's your neurons constantly moving with the neurological
Mhm.
um
Which
right.
that reminded me is that when they start getting frustrated because they're having all of this input and they don't know what to do with it and they need to process it and they need that time to process it,
Mhm.
that's where it can help to have a sensory break,
Correct.
to jump on a trampoline for a couple minutes,
Right.
to, I mean, we have one of those, little, we don't have a big trampoline in the backyard,
Mhm.
but we have a small exercise trampoline, and that's good enough. I mean, he can just jump up and down on
Right.
that for a little bit, or pound on his drums or something like that. Take a small sensory break, and getting that out. It's like it's kind of like that executive functioning in that sense, and the sensory are both working together
It
to
is.
cause an overload.
It is because remember the executive functioning or the working memory, you're taking in your emotions. So
Mm,
not only struggling with your starts with an I. It's not inhibitor. It's
um,
impulse. Not
impulse.
only you're taking your emotions, they're like, okay, I'm just gonna act. I'm your impulsivity, but some of them actually do pick up on social cues because they're like, oh wait, I can't do this. Now you're struggling. Now they're thinking about that. Their working memories going on that. You have this
Mhm.
at hand. The teacher's going, hey, you got to do this. You got to. Hey, are you paying attention to me? Are you? Can you imagine? I couldn't.
Mm.
But the best analogy that I can give to anybody about executive functioning is
Mhm.
imagine that you are standing in a place that you're familiar with. So you're in your home.
Mhm.
Let's say you're in your home. You have in your brain, you have planned out your day. You're going to get
Mhm.
this done, and you're all of a sudden someone dies. Then you lose your job. Then your cell phone breaks. Then your child goes, "Hey mom, I need you because so and so is bothering me and they're needing your emotional attention." And
Mhm.
then your husband goes, "Well, I'm see you later." Could you imagine? That's exactly what kids with autism or those who struggled in functional like skills deal with every single day to that intensity. It's
Yeah. Oof.
I
That's
couldn't I, I couldn't.
and and that's and that's sometimes it's so hard for us as parents to realize that's what they're going through, and
Right.
that we also need to take a step back and take a breath and, give them a second
Well, that
to gather, give
right.
them that time. Um, One of the things that we found that has begun to work really well is that when Curtis is getting so frustrated and there's a situation, he's getting frustrated and tensions are getting high about something that happened, usually before he does what's called escape behavior. And so he'll want to get out of the situation.
Right.
And so before, though, the thinking was you need to keep them there to deal with the situation. However,
Some
in some respects,
some respect,
especially if
yeah.
you have a demand on them,
Mhm.
you want them to follow through with the demand. Um, but when you're trying to reason with them and question about something, sometimes it's just not clicking. One of the things we found out just at the tail end of when we were doing our ABA in South Carolina was that there was new research coming up that when there's in a heightened situation, emotionally heightened situation, it's best to let them escape for a minute. They'll pull themselves together, and then you can come back and
Mhm.
reason this situation, and you can get a result.
Exactly.
Because, and it made sense to me because if they're so emotionally charged by the fact that their working memory is going crazy, they need a sensory break,
Mhm.
but somebody is telling them, no, you have to sit there. They're just going to explode in a meltdown. And you can't stop a meltdown. There's nothing you can do to stop a meltdown. You just have to
Mm.
let it run.
Mm.
And you really don't want to push them into a meltdown.
No, I mean that's the same thing with us, and we normally do it, but it's
Mhm,
more socially appropriate. We just go
mhm,
if we're in a business meeting and we hear something and we can't deal or something. Excuse me for a moment. You go to the bathroom and you come back and you're
mhm.
able to deal with it a lot better. I
Yep.
mean, we naturally do it. So I don't
Mhm.
understand why some, depending on the situation, it really does
Yes.
depend on the situation.
Yeah, it truly
Um,
does depend on the situation and what you're trying to if there is a demand, um, I don't remember what the protocol was, if we had to sit there, if there was a demand, we had to follow through with the demand. And, as soon as you do X, Y, and Z, you can go to your room, but you cannot go until you have done that. I think is what the protocol that we were working with. If it was just reasoning about why this didn't happen or why you didn't follow through or something, then we could let him go,
mhm.
get a hold on himself, and then come back and discuss it. So
Right.
it's okay in some of these instances, and you just have to, and that's a place where, as a parent, you gotta know your kid,
Yeah.
and
As
you'll
a
figure it
teacher,
out.
you got to know your students, right?
hmm And
Mhm.
as a therapist, you gotta know the
Yep,
clients
you do.
because you get to know their ticks, the little things that you can just, I can now, if something's going on and I can feel it and I can sense if something's going on and Curtis is getting
Right.
to that point where it's gonna cause an issue, and I'll just be like, "Come on, let's go."
Yeah,
I'll remove him from the
let's just
situation.
totally remove this.
We're not gonna do this.
But
Um,
what you're teaching 'em is a metacognitive strategy, by the way. You're teaching them, "Hey, I'm, getting mad. I recognize that I'm getting mad. So you're thinking about your own emotion and your own action. So it's metacognitive thinking, but you're teaching him how to also control that impulse of how not to react wrongly in the situation. And you're teaching him to walk away and come out. That's a metacognitive strategy. It's a social skill too. It's both.
And how do all these things interweave? It's so crazy. It's just,
It is crazy.
wow.
It is.
Okay. I think we're going to have to pick up again next week on this.
We do, because I definitely want to go over buddy review next week with this.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's a big one.
Peer Buddy was actually a really good thing that we had written into Curtis's IEP that helped a lot.
It's actually a executive functioning help.
Wow.
Yes.
See, we're all learning all sorts of stuff. All right. Well, we're so thankful for y'all to have stopped by and listened. If you want to shoot us a line as to something else that you would like us to talk about, please email us at info@myspectrumlife.com. And we can be found on various social media handles. Handles. These are our handles. I don't know what I'm saying. Save me, Kelsey.
You can find us on our media at facebook.com/myspectrumlife, instagram.com/myspectrumlife, and then twitter.com/myspectrumlife1. Oh, it's Monday, y'all.
Well, yes, it is. Well,
we'll leave you with that humor.
Yes, exactly. And we know that with a lot of faith, a whole lot of love, and plenty of fidget toys, we're all going to make it. Thanks and goodbye, everyone.